I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the murder of a father of three named Kouri Richins. Just before he died, his wife gave him a drink that prosecutors say was laced with poison. Here's the story. Kouri and Kouri Richins seem to be living the perfect little life. The attractive young couple had 3 young boys and were doing very well financially living in Utah. They traveled, had a beautiful home, and spent a lot of family time with the boys. But beneath the exterior, something else was happening. Family members say Kouri suspected his wife of trying to poison him, giving him food and drinks laced with poison. Kouri got so suspicious that he changed his life insurance and his will to give his money to his sister, who he trusted to take care of the kids. Now, prosecutors say Kouri was right. He died in March of 2022, a victim of fentanyl poisoning. After his death, Kouri wrote a book for her children to help them deal with the loss of their father. And just after the release of the book, Kouri was arrested and charged with the murder of Kouri. So in a case like this, you're talking about fentanyl poisoning, right? Fentanyl poisoning. So you've got to establish, if you're the prosecution, how a mom of 3, a wife, gets her hands on some deadly poison like this. Let's take a listen to a detective, Jeff Driscoll, talking to, in a prior hearing, talking about where Kouri made a connection to get fentanyl.
In our interviews, CL told us that in early 2022, the defendant reached out to her either by phone call or text message requesting that she procure fentanyl for what the defendant reported was an investor who had a back injury.
And upon the defendant asking CL to get fentanyl, what did CL do?
CL told us that she reached out to an acquaintance of hers, acquaintance 1, and requested that she introduce her to somebody that could sell her fentanyl. CL told us that she contacted acquaintance 2 after receiving his phone number and asked to arrange to meet to purchase some fentanyl from him. She stated that sometime in February, she believed she met up with acquaintance 2 at a Maverick gas station in Draper and purchased from him 15 to 30 round green-blue pills, which she understood to be fentanyl. CL told us that after purchasing the pills from acquaintance 2, she returned home to her house in Heber. She said that either later that night or the next day, the defendant met her in the driveway of that home and did a hand-to-hand exchange of pills for cash.
So during that questioning of the detective, and you hear the detective reference someone as CL. CL is Carmen Lauber, who is the housekeeper. Okay, that's significant. Now take a look at this. We have a affidavit regarding the housekeeper, Carmen Lauber. In the affidavit, Lauber admitted to supplying Kouri Richins with 15 to 30 fentanyl pills on 2 separate occasions, approximately 1 month before Kouri's death. She stated that Kouri paid her approximately $900 each time she supplied the pills. She provided details of the solicitation of the drugs, the pickup and drop-off locations, and other pertinent details that have been corroborated with digital forensic evidence. So, okay, you've got the housekeeper allegedly providing the fentanyl to Kouri Richins, but where does a housekeeper get the fentanyl? And that's from an apparent dealer, a drug dealer. But take a look at this. Robert Crozier's new story. He's the alleged drug dealer in all of this. After initially admitting to selling the housekeeper fentanyl, he later said this in an affidavit: I sold OxyContin to Carmen Lauber on 2 occasions in early 22. I told them I met her at the Maverick in Draper, both times to sell her the pills. I told them that I was certain that I had sold Carmen Lauber OxyContin 30 milligram pills, otherwise known as Roxy's or Roxy 30s. They asked me several times if I was sure, and I told them yes, I was sure I sold her OxyContin. They asked why I had previously told officers that I had sold her fentanyl. I told them I did not remember saying that, and that I had been detoxing during that interview and was out of it. Okay. I'm out of it. I didn't do it. It was OxyContin. It wasn't fentanyl. That brings us to our first question in the investigation. Where did the fentanyl allegedly come from? The fentanyl that killed Eric Richins. Joining me, former homicide detective, host of The Interview Room with Chris McDonough. It is Chris McDonough, and host of The Pascal Show. Pascal is with us. Great to have you both here, guys. Thank you. Chris, I'll begin with you. So you've got Kouri Richins, housewife, mother, housekeeper, drug dealer. What are your thoughts about where this fentanyl came from and what prosecutors are going to be able to prove here?
You know, Vinny, how many times have you seen this, right, in your time in the courtroom, that, you know, sometimes these types of cases, they live and die on the chain of evidence. And in this particular situation, you know, it appears that that supply chain may be broken. I mean, you have Kozier, you know, in 23 saying, yeah, I did it. And now in 25, under, you know, perjury, he signs an affidavit that says, well, I really didn't do it. I was only selling oxycodone. And so, you know, situations like that cause real problems for the prosecution.
Yeah, Pascal, this case is not straightforward. It's not like a march to the inevitable. This is going to be a battle inside the courtroom. This is a big issue because this is how prosecutors say he died. What are your thoughts about the fentanyl?
Well, my thoughts are this. How often can you really trust a drug dealer, especially a drug dealer that was also getting high off their own supply? He was going through some sort of detox later on, so he changed his story. There are still possibilities that he just doesn't remember because he was under the influence himself. I mean, there's so many possibilities here. I just don't think it can be just an open and shut case about him changing his story after the fact. He said it in the very beginning, and now he's changing it. Why? Is it because he found sobriety and maybe through his, while being high, he just doesn't remember exactly what he gave Carmen to give to Kouri? I feel like those are all factors here. But again, I'm side-eyeing this, Vinny, big time.
So, Chris, you know, and I'm a former prosecutor, right? So I've got to convince 12 people who know nothing about this case what happened here. The defense is doing anything and everything to try to stop me from doing that and from showing all the problems with the case. This is like problem number one, but it's a big one. What do you think the truth is, though, here, right? Like, okay, what I can prove in court is always sometimes more difficult than the truth. What do you think actually happened here in this transaction, and what's going on with this drug dealer with doing like a 180?
Yeah, I think the digital evidence could be very strong for the prosecution. If there's, you know, evidence of, hey, I need to cop some, you know, some blues. That's what fentanyl tabs are called. They're called blues. And if in fact that digital evidence exists and the prosecution can have the jury focus on that fact and not necessarily, you know, for lack of a better term, the headline, they may see that gap. And if they do fill that gap, then of course that could lead to, you know, a conviction. But if they don't see it, that could be problematic and maybe an acquittal.
Yeah, Pascal, what if this comes down to a he said, she said? The he is a drug dealer, the she is a housekeeper / part-time dealer.
I guess it just comes down to the evidence at the end of the day. They might have to just throw out that piece of information. Regardless, this man did lose his life due to having fentanyl in his system. So now I guess the ongoing question is, how did Kouri actually obtain that actual drug to get it into her husband for him to die?
Yeah, and Chris, I think where the defense may go is that Eric got it himself because he had a drug problem. And obviously, they likely won't be able to prove that, but they can kind of throw that out there for the jury to think about.
Yeah, 100%, Vinny. And, obviously that the proof beats the, speculation, right? Without that proven fentanyl source, it's going to be an interesting court battle.
So Pascal, as we saw her in the court. We see her in all these pictures, but we also saw her in the courtroom. We saw her on television promoting her children's book, helping children grieve the loss of a parent just before she got arrested. What does your gut tell you about what's going to happen at this trial, which is just around the corner here on Court TV? Does she strike you as the type of person who's going to get up on the stand and tell her story and perhaps tell the jury that her husband was a drug addict?
I think she's going to do whatever it takes to get the innocent verdict. That's what I think. I think right now, even when you guys were doing the replay of them explaining the fentanyl and everything, she was even rolling her eyes and just being very, very obvious in her disdain with what's being said in court. So much that I feel that, yeah, she's going to, if she has the opportunity, and if her team says it's a great idea, oh yeah, she's going to definitely take that stand. She's going to bring out all the dramatics and try to be as much of a victim as she can, and try to play as innocent as she can. I think that's what the game plan is going to be.
Yeah, Chris, she is such a wild card in all of this. What are we going to get? And if you think about it, right, in this story, he suspected her of poisoning him, but he stayed. Like she's got something going on where I think she is able to convince people of things. And that may be the mentality she has towards the 12 in the box.
Yeah, that's a great point, and that's what makes her so dangerous, right? At first I thought maybe this would have been a slam dunk. The toxicology proves his, the cause of death, but now linking it back to her and proving it beyond a reasonable doubt with her charm and her charisma, it's going to be a fight.
All right. Chris McDonough, The Interview Room. Make sure you download it, folks, on YouTube. Awesome stuff. Thank you so much, Pascal, sticking around. Coming up next, was the death of Kouri's mother's lover the alleged inspiration?
I'm going to ask you a lot of intensely personal questions.
From the crime scene to the courtroom, this is Victim to Verdict.
Everyone has this heightened sense of anticipation.
What a day here at Court TV.
Fireworks both inside and outside the courthouse.
Let the cameras roll.
This last year has been a living hell for our family. We have watched as Kouri has paraded around portraying herself as being widow and victim while trying to profit from the death of my brother.
So Kouri Richins' family has also been a part of this story and this saga. I want you to take a listen here to Kouri's mother, Lisa Darden.
I know her innocence, and that's all that matters. And it will come out. It's just time.
Now, in one of the affidavits filed in this case, there is some more information about Kouri Richins' mother. This is really, really interesting. Take a look. There was a prior incident in the family. In investigating Kouri Richins' associates, it was discovered that in 2006, Richins' mother, Lisa Darden, was living with an adult female with whom she was having a romantic relationship. In April of that year, her romantic partner died unexpectedly. An autopsy report of the female partner showed that her immediate cause of death was a drug poisoning from an overdose of oxycodone. Further investigation showed that Lisa Darden had been named as the beneficiary of her partner's estate a short time before her death. The female did have current prescriptions for oxycodone and reportedly struggled with abusing her meds. She, however, was not in a state of recovery from addiction at the time of her death. Based on my training and experience, this would likely rule out the possibility of an accidental overdose. So when that information first came out, people were like, well, did her mother kill her partner, her lover, for money? And did Kouri do that too? But then you just look at the scenario of how someone died and the result of it. Like it was a tragic overdose, and Kouri's mother ended up getting money. Which brings us to the next question in our investigation. Was the death of Kouri's mother's lover the alleged inspiration? Not trying to convict Kouri's mother of anything, but just the circumstances there. Was that the inspiration for this alleged plot to what happened to Eric? Joining me, criminal defense attorney, former district attorney Matthew Mangino, and still with us, podcaster Pascal. All right, Pascal, I'm interested in your thoughts here. Like, you know, you see something and then suddenly like a light bulb goes off over your head. And do you think there's a there?
Oh, I definitely think there's a there. I mean, if you have something that happened so long ago, maybe in her mind she had that just lingering in the back of her mind as an idea, because obviously this has been going on for a while. The husband was making allegations of, you know, her trying to poison him for a while. So she was, if those allegations are true, she was trying everything she could to erase this man from this planet. So I wouldn't be surprised if the apple didn't fall too far from the tree, like mother, like daughter. What other turn of phrase do we have? This is the vibe I'm getting for sure. I think she definitely was inspired by maybe what her mother was at least alleged of doing, and said, maybe I can do the same thing and, you know, recoup the benefits financially as well. Yeah.
Now, her mom was never charged, but Matthew, even if her mother had nothing to do with it, the circumstances of it, right? A significant other dies of a drug overdose and you get all the money. Wow, that's pretty easy, right? Let me ask you two questions, Matt. Do you think this was the alleged inspiration, number one? And number two, could you tell the jury about it? Could you argue to the jury about it? Or would that be overly prejudicial and not so probative?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that certainly this could have been some inspiration for Kouri. I don't think that the mother in any way said, hey, this is a good idea, why don't you try it? But on the other hand, I mean, oxycodone, that's a common overdose drug. I mean, this is someone who had a problem abusing. So I don't see that as like, hey, it worked for me, why don't you try it? The question is, you know, did Kouri, stop and think, hey, you know, I remember, you know, my mother's lover OD'd and she got the money because she was in the will or part of the estate. You know, maybe that's something that I could do, you know, instead of it being an overdose, I poison my husband. You know, that's a more likely scenario. But the question is, this isn't a prior bad act of Kouri Richins. This is the mother's lover. So I'm not sure how this gets into evidence in her case. I think it would be very difficult to get that into evidence unless there was some direct connection somewhere where she said, hey, this worked for Mom, let me try it.
So that's basically the difference between a TV show, a courtroom, and a TV show or a podcast, right? We have the ability to kind of bring in some of these other things that the jury may not consider. Pascal, what are your thoughts about the family in general? Like, it's interesting. They've stood by her. They've sort of been part of this story throughout. There was some involving the brother. It seemed that Kouri's accused of trying to recruit the brother to lie for her. What role do you think they'll play in the trial? Do you think we're going to hear from the family, kind of standing up for Kouri and giving her side of the story?
I think that if the mother's basically saying that she's standing with Kouri, I think that most of the family, I would assume, is going to be standing on the same side as well. You also got to understand, you never underestimate the power of denial. And of course, when you add family into it, when blood is involved, people are going to try to stand 10 toes down for the people that they love, their siblings and their child and whatnot. So I could see that actually happening, and maybe throughout the entire trial. But only time will tell during this trial if they're going to stay on her side or not stay on her side.
All right. Big thanks, Pascal. Make sure you go on YouTube, The Pascal Show. And if you're in the chat, make sure you ask him to sing during his podcast. Because, yes, he can sing. Matt Mangino's going to stick around. Still to come, how important is the lover's testimony? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the death of Kouri Richins, a man who loved being a father and wanted to keep his family together. But he suspected his wife wanted him dead. Then he died. Here's the story. Kouri Richins was working at Home Depot when she met her husband, Eric. Eric owned an extremely successful company and was doing well financially. Eric and Kouri fell in love and started a family. They were raising 3 young boys when the marriage hit the rocks. There was tension over money connected to Kouri's struggling house flipping business and issues of infidelity. Things got so bad, Eric thought Kouri was trying to poison him. Eric died of fentanyl poisoning after consuming a drink prepared by Kouri. Prosecutors say she laced the drink to get his money. But Kouri claims her innocence and may argue that Eric had a drug problem and OD'd. Either way, there are now 3 boys without a dad and with a mom accused of murder. Another part of this case and what happened in all of this is that Kouri is alleged to have had a lover, a boyfriend on the side while she was married to Eric. And there are some communications that prosecutors have brought out. Take a look at this. This is a text from Kouri Richins to her alleged lover. On December 17th, 2021, the defendant told a witness 8, who's the lover, that she felt stuck and trapped in her marriage, and it would be better if Kouri Richins just died. That's powerful evidence, potential evidence. Take a listen now. Our producers went through some of these text messages, and what you're going to hear are the messages allegedly sent by Kouri Richins to her lover.
If I was divorced right now and asked you to marry me tomorrow, would you? I just want to lay on the couch and cuddle you, watch a murder documentary and snuggle. I want you today, every day, not just sexually, but physically, mentally. Every day when I wake up, I do want a future together. I do want you. Figure life out together. If you could just go away and you could just be here, life would be so perfect. I love you. I have a crazy dream. You quit your job, I divorce and come up with millions and millions. We buy Midway and live in the guest house and rent out the huge house as a big event center. $15,000 a day like they charge down the road. Maybe $12,000 to stay competitive, and we will just run the event center as our daily job and hang out every day, raise some kids, have a little farm. Deal? To me, you're worth millions a year. I'm honored to be your friend, best friend actually, lover, go-to. Life is gonna be different, I promise. You're one hell of a patient person. I hate your hard days. I wish I could be there to turn them around for you. Can I try Friday? Give me a few days. Hang in there until then, please. Love you.
Okay. Wow. All right. Gets us to the next question in our investigation. How important is the lover's testimony? And some of those text messages. Still with me, attorney Matthew Mangino, and joining me, the attorney representing the victim, Eric Richins' family, Greg Skordas, is with us as well. Matt, I'll start with you. Your thoughts on what you just heard and potentially what this testimony could be like. How important is it?
Well, I think it's extremely important. It's compelling evidence. I mean, it although you don't have to show a motive to kill your husband, this certainly provides a motive. She specifically says, it'd be better if he was dead. It would be better if he was gone. And I think that's significant evidence that points a finger at her in terms of wanting her husband to disappear and having the ability, in this instance, to make him disappear. I think it's compelling evidence that's going to have a significant impact on a jury.
All right, Greg Skordas, your thoughts about the lover and the significance, importance here and what happened?
Oh, I think Matthew's right. I think that it's important for a number of reasons, not just for the motive that she had this lover to go to, but she mentions in the text, Vinnie, that there's money, that she wants money, that she thinks that if she could get a couple $1 million and buy the house in Midway, which by the way was a huge house, that they could rent it out, that they could do events. And we all know that an easy way for her to get millions was for her husband to die. She wouldn't have gotten nearly as much had they divorced, but as a widow, she would have stood to gain the millions of dollars that she was talking about with her boyfriend. So I think it's important not only for the fact that she had a launching pad, she could go to the boyfriend, and so she was hardly a sympathetic victim, mourning for her husband, but she had a financial motive as well.
Matthew, if in fact the lover takes the stand and prosecutors put him up there and they hear all these text messages, does that sort of force Kouri Richins' hand into having to get up on the witness stand and kind of try to explain or put all of this into a different context?
Well, Vinnie, that's the most important decision that any defendant and defense team has to make, whether or not the defendant will take the stand. Here, she comes across as someone who's pretty confident. I wouldn't be surprised to see her take the witness stand to try to explain away these things in terms of the relationship that she had and her in the way she was going to score in this case if in fact her husband died because while they were still married because of this prenuptial agreement, and plus any potential insurance proceeds. So I think she's going to have to explain these things away if she's going to convince a jury that somehow she's not responsible for her husband's death.
Greg, do we know how serious this alleged relationship was with her lover?
We don't, and I think we'll learn more about it if and when he testifies, and if she does, like Matthew says, speak in response to that. Just from the text message that you read, Vinny, they're pretty extensive. I mean, she talked about a sexual relationship, and I don't know that you would have that conversation if you had just thought about it. She talks about the money. She talks about being together. She talks about cuddling and doing the things that it almost sounds like they have already done. We don't know that, and I don't pretend to say that that occurred, but she certainly seems comfortable with whatever relationship she was having with this man, and the fact that she had a place to go if something happened to her husband.
Greg, I wanted to follow up on this. So she's allegedly got this lover. He believes that she's trying to poison him, yet they're still together. What's the story behind that? How is that possible if you have one person, you're trying to kill me, the other one is allegedly sleeping with someone else? How is it that at the time that he died, they're still together?
Eric wanted to be a father more than anything else. He wanted to raise those boys, and he knew that the best way to do that was in a family with a mom and a dad and the 3 kids together. And I think he was just hopelessly optimistic that she would turn around and that they could have the life that he wanted with her. But he wasn't going to split up this family and see the boys every other week or something like that. He was willing to do whatever, even risk his life, as it turns out, so that he could be with those boys. And that's exactly what he did.
Matthew Mangino, that to me is such an important fact, because I could see every juror, if all this evidence comes in about, an allegation of and he was suspicious that something was going on, as to why they would be together and why he would still trust this woman at this point. I don't know if they're going to come back and say that everything was great in the relationship, that all this other stuff is made up. But how important do you think it is for the jury to get that picture about why this man is still there?
Yeah, I think that's extremely important. And it really, paints a vivid picture of this victim and certainly why he would put up with these issues that he was rightfully concerned with, that maybe she's trying to poison him, that he would make that sacrifice to continue to be in the presence of this woman because of his children. That's going to tug at jurors' heartstrings.
Hey, Greg, do we know how the kids are doing? No one's impacted more by this than they are.
Yeah, they've been largely out of the picture. They're with family members. By all accounts, Vinny, they're doing incredibly well, and doing well because they haven't been in the limelight. They haven't been exposed to the public. They haven't been exposed to the media. So they're doing as well as you could possibly expect under the circumstances. Yeah,
those circumstances are just, it's awful. It's absolutely awful. Matthew Mangino, great to see you. Thank you so much. Greg is going to stick around. Coming up next, can prosecutors prove the alleged prior attempt?
The person who benefited the most from Eric being dead is the defendant.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Welcome to Closing Arguments.
What's happening here?
It's unreal. Let me show you exactly what happened.
Closing Arguments with Vinnie Politan. Weeknights at 8/7 Central. Only on Court TV.
Ezra McCandless was gender confused. She is standing trial for stabbing one of her lovers to death.
Was this murder? The Killer Girlfriend Murder Trial. Weekdays on Court TV Legendary Trials.
Please do not allow Kouri to take advantage and make a mockery of our justice and legal system anymore. She has done enough. Please do not allow Kouri to hurt Eric's memory, our family, friends, and community anymore. We have been through enough.
That's Kouri Richins' sister speaking in court, and this has been really difficult on that family. Absolutely brutal case. And again, you think about the 3 kids, right? Plus Eric's sister and the rest of his family. They were a very close, tight-knit family. Now, take a look at this, because this is the part of the story that makes this so different. Prosecutors said this in a court filing about the alleged Valentine's Day incident. Valentine's Day. Eric Richins called witness 2, another close friend, and reported, "I think my wife tried to poison me." Eric Richins told witness 2 that the defendant had left him his favorite sandwich from the diner along with a note. He said that he ate some of the sandwich, got sick, and blacked out. Eric Richins told Witness 2 that he felt like he was going to die. And this was a special Valentine's Day trip to work that Kouri had left him lunch, something that she rarely did. Take a listen to the prosecutor talking about this.
She learned that whatever she used on Valentine's Day wasn't strong enough, which is why she went back and asked for something stronger. But she had a similar MO, right? You know, her MO is to go to the drug dealer, procure fentanyl, and 2 or 3 days later, 4 days later, administer the fentanyl. That is the same. The drug is the same. The drug dealer is the same. The timing is the same. But she learned. She learned she needed something stronger. She also learned how to administer it. She learned that putting it in a sandwich where Eric Richins could take a bite, feel the effects, set the sandwich down, was not the proper way to administer a fatal dose of fentanyl. Instead, she administered it with a lemon shot, where Eric Richins would throw it back all at once. She says that in her journal article, her journal note at Exhibit 49. And she learns that it takes a truckload of fentanyl to kill him. She learns that one bite in a sandwich isn't enough. It has to be stronger, it has to be administered at once, and it has to be a lot. And that's why Eric Richins' toxicology shows 5 times the lethal amount in his blood.
This it seems to be very important evidence for prosecutors, right? If you hear this, you're like, oh, wow. Okay, so Valentine's Day she's trying to do this? So something else that prosecutors want to do is bring in a domestic violence expert, and it's something that's been argued inside the courtroom. Take a listen to the judge.
Whether they've laid a foundation for the jury to draw a reasonable inference that Eric Richins did in fact conclude subjectively that Kouri Richins tried to kill him on February 14th and then stayed with her. If they do, I think their argument that Dr. Venino's testimony is helpful to the trier of fact is stronger. And we can have a conversation about it today or tomorrow or in the future.
So that domestic violence expert they want to bring in to talk to the jury about why Eric Richins would stay with someone who he believed attempted to kill him. But they can only bring in the expert if they can establish this prior incident, which brings us to the next question in our investigation. Can prosecutors prove the alleged prior attempt? Big evidence. Joining me, private investigator Jason Jensen, still with me, the attorney representing victim Eric Richins' family, Greg Skordas. Greg, I'll start with you. What do you think about this prior attempt? How much evidence do they have of it, and can they prove this to a jury that she tried to kill him on Valentine's Day?
I think in all candor, it's an uphill battle. I think that proving that A, she laced the sandwich, and B, that she had the drugs and that he suffered the way that is described is going to be difficult. Now, it's certainly relevant in terms of her prior conduct and in terms of what she's capable of and in terms of a conversation she may have had with her dealer that said, like you mentioned earlier, hey, I needed to be a little bit stronger. That seems to corroborate the fact that there was a prior. But that's so prejudicial. I'm not sure that the judge can go down that road and allow it in, even though it appears to have happened, just because there's probably insufficient proof. Now, Jason may disagree with me, but I think that's going to be a tough one for the state, a tough hurdle for them to overcome.
Yeah, Jason, I'll ask you the same question, but I'll also ask you, have you ever heard of a case like this where you've got more than one poisoning attempt and the couple stays together?
Personally, I have not seen a case like that where there was a prior incident of poisoning and it turned out, that they stuck together. That would be really illogical. But when it comes to evidence, I really can't disagree too much with Greg, because he was my professor 20 years ago. So when it comes to evidence, I tend to agree with him. But in this particular scenario, I think there is a path forward because of the facts surrounding that particular Valentine's Day incident. He was rendered unconscious, and short of death, other signs of fentanyl poisoning include sluggishness, lethargy, and even unconsciousness. So if there was any way to prove that there was a fentanyl purchased in that time frame and it's consistent with this later time of death, I think they have a chance.
Let me ask you, Greg, the family, did they know about this this Valentine's Day sandwich?
They knew that there were some problems going on. Whether it was specific to that, I don't know. But he did make some reference, Vinny, and I think we've talked about this before, to at least one family member that said, look, if something happens to me, I really want you to look closely at Kouri because I think she's trying to kill me. So there were certainly family members that were aware that there were problems. There were family members that were aware that Eric felt that he was being targeted by her and was likely to be in her crosshairs to be perhaps killed someday, and even warned people, look, if something happens, take a look at what Kouri's been doing.
Yeah. Jason, what are your thoughts here? Like, at Court TV, we've covered poisoning cases through the years, and inevitably, antifreeze. It was always antifreeze. There was one case down here in Georgia where a woman killed 2 people with antifreeze, right? She killed one, nothing happened, so she killed the next one. And then when they caught the first one, they went back to the second one, they went back to the first one. Does this surprise you, the manner of the alleged poisoning here, to go out and solicit fentanyl and then to try to administer it through a drink?
No, quite frankly, Vinny, the situation is, we've heard in the news, thousands and thousands of deaths have been the result of fentanyl poisoning over the last few years, to the tune of over 100,000 per year. So if somebody thought this would just be another statistic, they might think they'd get away with it.
Yeah, that's Greg. That's I think Jason's right on. We only have about 15 seconds here, but that goes back to, okay, people die of drug overdoses, and a lot of times these things aren't investigated as homicides.
That's exactly right, and I think that that's what was intended here, that it would be looked at as a suicide or an accidental overdose, and it would be just another, like Jason said, number of person who took too much fentanyl, too much opioid, and died, and maybe there wouldn't be an investigation, because it does happen. It does happen a lot in this country.
Unfortunately. Greg Skordas, always great to have you on. Thank you so much. Jason Jensen, great to see you again. Okay. Get ready, folks, for this trial. This one has many layers and many issues. This is not going to be a cakewalk for prosecutors, and they know it. They have 100+ witnesses lined up. The defense has 35 witnesses lined up. Get ready for an epic battle that you'll see right here on Court TV this month. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for the answers as the investigation continues.